There it goes. Alrighty. For the opener today, we know that the extinction at the end of the Mesozoic, at the end of the Cretaceous, got rid of those non-avian dinosaurs, things like T-Rex, and it was still alive, and so was Triceratops, and then they watched the asteroid come in, and they literally boiled alive in their own flesh as it was being torn off their bones. We know that the mammals that made it through were the little rat-like things, and the early part of the Cenozoic, most of the mammals stayed small. But there's a specific plant that it wasn't until like the middle part, the latter part of the Paleogene, the first section of the Cenozoic, there's a specific plant that came into existence that allowed our herbivores to become monstrous. What is that very important specific plant that is all over the place now? It's not ferns. It is everywhere in this country. It's all over outside. What?
Everywhere.
No. Which plant? Which specific plant is everywhere that developed in the latter part of the first of the three sections of the Cenozoic? No, it's not a fern thing. Those have been around since like dinosaurs. There's a very specific plant that herbivores eat today that developed in the Cenozoic. What is this most important plant that developed?
Trees.
It was after angiosperms. It was technically after trees.
A bush.
It's everywhere. No, not bushes. Grass. Grass. Things like barley and wheat and rice. Yes. I probably messed it up. Let me check. Oh, I don't want that. And we're not in chemistry. We are in earth space science. Let me see. I may have the wrong. Oh, come on. Yes, the magic plant that developed was grass, like the regular grass, not the other thing that can mean, like grass. All right, let's see the opener. What did I do wrong? From the 22nd, which is today. Oh, because I did file upload. I apologize. Let me fix that. Text entry, not file upload. I probably did that somewhere else too. I'll check it while we're going over this. All right, if you refresh it, it should let you do that. All right, so we're going to talk as an overview of the Cenozoic. I'm going to talk more about the tectonics specifically today, what was happening with the plates, because as we've discussed with climate change, that's like the most important factor of controlling the temperature of the planet is where is the land and where is the water, and does the water have the ability to circulate? Because that's going to control how hot the planet is going to become. It's things like the Gulf Stream. And then we talk about the jet stream when it's the air, but the way that currents move is extremely important to controlling the temperature of the planet. This started from the end of the Cretaceous, technically 65.5 million years ago, but I don't care. The asteroid slammed into the planet off the Yucatan Peninsula. We watched that documentary. I guess it was took 2 days, the middle of before spring break. I'm not going to go back over the whole sequence of events, but that's what took out most of these non-avian dinosaurs. There were a few that sort of tried to hold on, but then they ended up dying out from inbreeding and disease and starvation and all different kinds of wonderful, nasty things. The Cenozoic was originally called the Cainozoic, and it used to be split into two, okay, the Tertiary and the Quaternary, which is why the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction. Cretaceous was the last age of the dinosaurs. The Paleogene is the first age of the mammals. That's why it's called the KT boundaries. It used to not be called the Paleogene. It used to be just Tertiary, which is where the T came from, and the Quaternary. Not Quaternary, Quaternary. But the Tertiary has actually been split into two. So we now have three parts of the Cenozoic. We have the Paleogene, the Neogene, and then the Quaternary. Now, normally that's about as far as I would go in depth as far as breaking down the different periods and then the epochs. But we're going to go further with this one. We're just sort of going over an overview with the tectonics, with what was happening today. We'll do specifically the Paleogene, which has 3 parts. We'll do that one tomorrow. And then we'll do the Neogene, which has 2 parts. We'll do that the next day. And we'll do the quaternary, which also has 2 parts. The part that we're in right now is the Holocene. That's the age of man. Not Holocaust, Holocene. But we're going to do each one individually. So that'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, we're going to take a look at the Ice Age megafauna, the things like the short-nosed bear and the giant ground sloth and the mammoth and the mastodon. And like, we're not going to talk a lot about humankind yet. We'll talk about their origins a little bit. They started really at the end of this period, but modern man is specifically from the quaternary. I'm planning on Monday. It depends if I'm going to be here Monday or not. If we're going to do the rise of man on Monday, or if I still have not found a documentary that I like. I'm looking at some on the Ice Age. I'm looking at some of the rise of man. I'm just not finding one that's not like unbelievably boring. So I'm going to keep looking. If I'm not here Monday, I'm not flip-flopping. So I don't know. Depends if I have to take my sister to the airport. And then it should be Wednesday, should be the review. And then the test will be Thursday. And then it was Thursday, was supposed to be an asynchronous day. And then this is not this week, next week. And then Friday was bad weather day. But now because we already had the bad weather, Thursday's a regular day. That's the 1st, April 1st. And Tuesday's an asynchronous day. Thursday is the April 1st, Thursday, which was a asynchronous day, is now a school day. Friday, April 2nd, this is next week. That was supposed to be a bad weather day with no school, but because we had bad weather, that is now a school day. And so that is the asynchronous day. They just changed the schedule like right before spring break started. So it's no big deal. I figured they were going to do it. You know, to make up 4 days worth of time. All right. So anyways, the early Cenozoic was hot. And very, very humid. Much, much, much hotter. And I'm not going to go too far in depth with temperatures until I do each individual period. But quite a bit warmer. And it's not like there weren't even any seasons. Like the entire planet, all the way to the poles, was at least 75 degrees, which I know doesn't sound hot to us. I think 75 degrees outside feels awesome. But that's including at the North and the South Pole. Like the entire planet was warm. So there's no ice caps in the early Cenozoic. That came much later. Like Antarctica really didn't start forming until about 35 million years ago. The North Pole didn't really start getting its ice till about 3 million years ago, give or take. It's what's, a few 100,000 years. But the more consistent just means there weren't any seasons. If there were, they were way more of a mild swing than we have now. And I swear, over spring break, my younger niece, she's in high school, I love her, but she thought we were going through an ice age when it was all frozen. I said, honey, no, that was just a cold snap. We don't winterize our homes in Texas the way they do in the North. I have friends from Boston, and they're like, y'all are stupid. How could you not deal with just a few days of snow? And I'm like, not our fault. Our lines couldn't take it. The hottest period of all of the Cenozoic was called the Paleocene, Eocene thermal maximum. That is what split the first and the second part of the Paleogene. The first part's the Paleocene, the second part's the Eocene, and then the third part is the Oligocene, if I'm remembering right. Just like with the Mesozoic, I have to read some of them to pronounce them the right way. Now, our current warming trend, not that humans are the only thing that contributes to it. I'm going to have so much fun doing this next 6 weeks, but the amount of carbon dioxide that we produce and like all the different ways that we produce it rivals a flood basalt volcano. But we definitely are a major contributing factor to the warming up, but we're in an interglaciation right now anyways, and we call it global warming. Now they just call it climate change. They keep changing. All right, in the Paleogene, we had a very tropical environment. In the Neogene, we had a cool down. Specifically, which we'll get into the Neogene in 2 days, because of all the mountains that were being pushed up. The way that rocks weather actually pulls carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas, and when you take away the greenhouse gas, the planet can cool off. So I know this sounds weird, but it's true. When the rocks break down, they pull the carbon dioxide out of the air. Continents started drifting apart to their more modern positions. They didn't really get where they are now until the last part, Quaternary, which is the part that we're in right now. In the Pleistocene, which is in the middle part, the end of the middle part of the Cenozoic, that's when the glaciation started. And so that was the beginning of what you call the Ice Age, which was over a decent period of time. It started in the Neogene with the Pleistocene, and then it carried over into the Quaternary. But we're not in it anymore. We're in the Holocene, the Age of Man. I've seen different, oh, somebody just came online, let me check it. I've seen different, how far down in latitude did the glaciers go? Most of the ones that I've seen somewhere like Illinois, New York, but I did see with the higher elevations as far as Kansas, which I know you think of Kansas as perfectly flat, but not, where is my Google Meet button? The entire state is not flat. Oh, I thought I heard somebody, okay, I guess not. And the glaciations, when they left behind chunks of ice, which gouged out giant depressions. And then when those melted, they gave us the Great Lakes. It was one of the last formations of our country, which I could go into like a lot of depth with that, but I'm not going to. All right, the mountains in the Neogene. Okay, we don't know what that noise was. In the Neogene, we had specific mountain ranges that went up. Some of them I put there how long ago. Some of them I did not. Like I said, in the Neogene, we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth. Do I have any more on here? I gotta figure out what that noise was. What the heck was that noise? Mail, maybe? Let me see. Oh, I just got the email. That's what it was. It was about you, Chase, that you're coming back. Okay. I'm sorry, I know my head is probably in your way. I apologize. Okay, so the Alps went up at this time. They were not all simultaneously at the same time. The Himalayas, this is the tallest of the chain. This is when India slammed into Asia. This is when they started forming and they continued for some time. The Himalayas was one of the most important mountain chains for the cooling down from the Paleocene. The Rockies are the ones that are on our west coast. We know the Appalachians, they started like way long ago. When Pangea wasn't even Pangea yet, is when they started going up. The Zagros Mountains, when the Arabian, like all of the Middle East area started coming together. That's what closed the Tethys Sea. Or actually it closed the Tethys Ocean and created the Tethys Sea, and then eventually the Tethys Sea, once the Arabian Peninsula totally slammed into place, it broke into the current like the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea and the Red Sea. That's what happened to the Tethys Sea. But the other thing that happened, and I know this isn't mountains, rivers drastically shifted. The Mississippi used to not be where the Mississippi is. It used to be a lot further east. When the glaciations came down, it like dammed the river, and it had the avert around the side, and it pushed it to the west. So your major rivers in Africa, let's see, I'm probably going to get my South America and my African ones like messed up, but let's see, the Zambezi, the Congo, South America, the Nile. I don't know I'm not a geography person. I don't think I haven't put all the names over here. But it's not that they disappeared, their course just shifted. And I'm going to focus more on North America since that's where we live. I have to talk about Africa because that's the cradle of life, the Fertile Crescent. I'll get more into that in a week, whether that be Monday or Tuesday. Like I said, it just depends on if I have to take off on Monday. We'll see. I don't know. All right, so Australia and New Guinea need to be together. All part of Gondwana. They broke free, actually broke free from each other too. Antarctica shifted over the South Pole, and we've said before, in order to have an ice cap, you really have to have land for the ice to hold on to. Antarctica developed first. because of the land mass. The northern ice sheet did not develop until rather recently. It doesn't have a big land mass. The Atlantic Ocean started getting wider. And very, well, 2.8 million years ago, and it sounds like a long time, but very recently, North and South America had a land bridge. It's called the Isthmus of Panama, which allowed marsupials to actually go from South America, the possum is not from here, it's actually a South American animal, to migrate north. And it allowed the horses to migrate. It allowed the llamas went south. Llamas are actually from North America, believe it or not. We don't have them here naturally anymore. Let's see, the northern land bridge let the elephants, if you had elephants, and we also had rhinos, allowed them to go into Asia. We don't have those anymore. All different kinds of weird stuff was happening. And at about this time, this is also when we had glaciation, soaks up the water, sea levels plummet, more land is exposed. Yes, you're still waiting. I think there's one more on here. No, there's not. And we're not going to get into a lot of animals quite yet. I did that when I did individual periods. The Cenozoic is an era. The three parts of it are periods, and then the parts of those are called epochs. And I could go further than that, but I'm not going to. We don't have enough time. So this maximum, the hottest of the hot, you had no ice caps. Okay, the sea level was 300 meters. That's approximately 1,000 feet above where they are now. I don't know what our elevation is here. Our elevation here. You'd be like my kid and go, "Hey Siri." No, don't do it.
Hey Siri.
No. She's annoying.
Mine went off.
All right, let's see. Sea level. Azle, Texas. Would we have been underwater? 712 feet. So we would have been underwater. Okay, so, and like I said, it's not an exact, like, I don't know the exact thing in my head. I know it's a little bit more than, a meter's a little bit more than 3 times longer than a foot. So yes, we would be underwater. So when you had mountains going up, primarily the Himalayas, okay, they're the one that was going up at this time as India was slamming into the Asian plate. And I'm not going to make you understand like the chemistry behind it. I mean, I could put the formula up here, but no, it's okay. We're not going to do that. When rocks weather, okay, when they erode, there is a chemical reaction that occurs with the carbon dioxide in the air. Okay, and it pulls the carbon dioxide out. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases let the light come through. They don't block anything, but they keep the heat from getting out. And so it just keeps heating up and heating up. Well, when the Himalayas went up, and yes, there were other mountains at the time, but these are the most important ones to get us out of this maximum, pulled that greenhouse gas out naturally. The heat was allowed to escape the earth. We had a cooling down, had higher latitudes, which is indicative for getting snow accumulation and glaciation. Antarctica moved its little tushy down over the South Pole. And about 35 million years ago, the southern caps started. The northern caps did not start until about 3 million years ago. Much, much, much more recent. So today is much more of the tectonics. And I have to figure out what I'm going to do after this unit because I have to do the water cycle. I'm probably going to do tides, Coriolis effect, winds, and the ocean currents. And then it'll probably be the end of the 6 weeks because we have 4 more in 6 weeks.
So here it says what caused the reverse the warming trend, and it's one of the options is rising numerous mountain chains or management. And is that a trick question because it said the Himalayas? So is it
There were others besides the Himalaya. That's the rock one. Yeah. And I have some people that are like, oh, it always says all of these or none of these. That's always the answer to us. No, it's not. No, there are others that were going up simultaneously. It's just these were the ones that were forming literally like they were in like the baby stages and the teenage stages to help pull this guy out. But there are other ones that were going up at the same time. That's the one that, like I said, there's no book for this class. There's no resources at all for this class. And so I'm having to pull all of this out of the internet and then cross-check it. So that's the one that's mentioned the most often. The Isthmus of Panama, okay, that's what connects North and South America. So you've got like, what's down there? Like Guatemala, Honduras, and Panama, and a bunch of like Ecuador, I think is down there. Like I said, my geography is not the best. So what joins North and South America? This is when it came together. Yes, like Latin America. Okay, so there are 2 major currents in the ocean. I'm going to have to go back and educate myself on this too. The Humboldt, you probably know the Gulf Stream. That's because like, we're near the Gulf. These both strengthen. And when you have more motion of water, you actually have the spread out of the heat. It's not all centered in one area, and that helps cool things down as well. And then the way that we know all of this, and we've talked about this when we were talking about how we age the Earth, the oxygen isotope record, like if it's oxygen 16 or 18, I'm not going to go in depth with this again because we've already done it. Depending on how much of each is present, lets it know, was it hotter or was it colder? You've got the magnetic striping on the seafloor, the pole reversals. We know how quickly the tectonic plates are moving just in general. These are the major things that we use that go, okay, this happened at this time period and this happened at this time period. But temperature-wise specifically is the oxygen isotope. Where they were specifically is going to be your tectonic plates. How quickly they're going underneath other plates. And I bet you we're getting close to another pole reversal because our Earth is not acting happy right now. Our polar wander is wobbling a lot faster than it's supposed to. You blame everything on the Democrats. Okay, the Earth doesn't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, Hayden. I guarantee you it does not care.
Yeah, made them fall. We have a stupid president.
Hayden,
What?
stop it. You're not supposed to talk about that in here. This is Earth space, not politics or government or wherever you're supposed to talk about that
Dinosaurs wouldn't
stuff.
even like treating Joe Biden.
The dinosaurs would have eaten everybody. Well, not the herbivores. All right, so the Cenozoic is known as the age of mammals. Okay, it's not the age of man, it's the age of mammals. Now the Holocene is the age of man. That's the latter part of the Quaternary. The beginning of the Paleogene is first. Okay, after that's the Neogene, and last is the Quaternary. Our early mammals were not big. Okay, and we'll get more into this tomorrow. Not only, well, the smaller animals were ignored by the dinosaurs and the Cretaceous. Okay, so that's one of the components of why our mammals were small. But also the vegetation at this time was jungle, dense vegetation, a lot easier than large animals can, more than about 20 pounds. Like they were little. We didn't get big until we had grass. And that didn't happen until the very end of the Paleogene. And then the cooling down of the Neogene got rid of a lot of the forests and allowed the grasses to expand. So that's when we had our big plains. That's what happened to the bulk of the center of our country. Horses. Horses started very early on. Okay, they were about the size of a dog and they had 4 toes. They weren't big at all. Eohippus was only about this big. And I could have done a lesson on both horse and whale evolution because whales started off on land too. It was the size of a raccoon. I just can't, somebody wants to come in. I can't fit it all in. The only thing I could think of is after this, I could admit, if I wanted to, instead of doing like the tides and stuff, I could try to fit that in after this test, but I don't think I'm gonna have enough time because I still have to do all of the water cycle and I have to do all of like human impact climate change and the carbon cycle. I haven't done that one either. So anyways, horses started in the Paleogene. Very interesting evolution from Eohippus to Mesohippus and all of the other early types of horse. The center of our country used to have elephants and rhinos too. Now they didn't look like modern day stuff. The elephants actually had 4 tusks, and the trunk was really weird looking. The rhinos got huge. Descendants of the elephants, the mastodon and the mammoth, they got huge. And then by the end of the first part of the Cenozoic, we had what would be the ancestors to the modern dog, cat, pig, llama. We had camels in our country. We obviously don't anymore. The llamas went south and the camels went over across the northern bridge. They started here. They were big too. Like I said, most of the animals early on, mammals, not birds. Birds were weird. They were freakishly huge. But most of your mammals in the early part were very small, and then towards the end, and then into the Neogene, that's when they got big. Okay, we have 2 major types of mammals. If they are the northern hemisphere, which basically was Laurasia when Pangea broke up, they are eutherians. They are placentals. Hopefully you know what a placenta is by now. Okay, it's what nourishes a fetus or an embryo, whatever you want to call it, inside the mother until it's born at what we consider full term. Not that it can some animals can get up and run within minutes of being born. Obviously humans take a little while, but they're carried what's called to term. In the southern hemisphere is where the marsupials came from, the metatherians. They give birth to live young, but they're very undeveloped. I don't know if you know anything about like kangaroos. I mean, it looks like a little ugly pink like blob, and it has to crawl its way up into the pouch, and then it grows up in the pouch. The only marsupial that we have in the northern hemisphere, which came from South America, is the possum. At least I think that's the only native marsupial that we have here. Most people think of kangaroos and wallabies and wombats and stuff like that. But that's why you find them in the southern hemisphere. That's where they originated from. I don't know why there's this distinctive difference between the two. I did not go that far into this. How much time do we have? I think everybody in this class did take their test from before spring break. Don't think I missed anybody in here. Oh, I heard something. Let's see. It sounded like a Google Meet notification. No. Oh, I'm not put present. All dings and stuff. Take a week off, and I'm not used to what they mean anymore. All right, so no dinosaurs, but the top predators were not mammals. They were not lizards. They are called terror birds. Titanus is this one on the right, and Diatrema is the one on the left. This puts it in scale how large they were. They were at least 6 feet tall when they were fully grown. These things could not fly. Okay, so similar to like an ostrich, but its head was huge. And a couple of the documentaries that I was looking at, they're a little older, and so they're a little, like the animation's a little cheesy. Like you can tell it's older. But these things basically use their beak as a battering ram, and it would knock whatever it was, like a dog or it was going after a pig or a horse, knock it unconscious, and it would tear its throat out.
Whoa.
So these were your top predators for a long time. And this was the closest thing that we do have to dinosaurs that are in the Cenozoic. We already know that that's where birds came from. They are the advanced dinosaurs. So, I mean, we still have them. We have I don't know if I used to have chickens. You've never been around chickens. They're mean. In fact, we used to have these little, like, it was like a necklace that we put over them, and there were like little T-Rex arms that would come out. It was hilarious. I wish I would have taken videos of it. What? Those things are prehistoric. I have seen them before in the zoo, and they have a really weird way that they greet you. They like out. It's really weird. The other birds that I can think of that are at the zoo, and I don't know about the Fort Worth Zoo, cassowaries are pretty much prehistoric. The one that you just said, and it's huge. It's like this tall. That stork that you're talking about. And then when they communicate, they like slap their beak, like they chatter, if you will, with their beak. So, anyways, these are your top predators, and then the neogene to the middle part. This is where we had the earliest of primates. Okay, not true man. And that came later. And I think we didn't evolve from monkeys. No, we didn't evolve from monkeys, but we share common ancestors. Okay, but going way back, the neogene is when the earliest of the primates developed. Cattle. Bovine is the fancy word for cattle. Porcine is the fancy word for pig. Okay, but our cattle, our sheep, our goats, our gazelle, things like deer, this is where they just took off. Your grazers. Grazers eat grass. Okay, so these things didn't evolve until the neogene because grass didn't start taking off until right before this period started. The quaternary, this is what you think of, the woolly mammoth, the saber-toothed cat, the scimitar-toothed cat, the giant brown sloth, all those things. Those are your ice age megafauna. That's in the quaternary, the first part of the quaternary. The only one that made it through for a little bit was the direwolf. Direwolf made it about an extra 1,000 years further than the other megafauna. Most of the things that made it through, it was their smaller versions because it started warming up. And being big is an adaptation against cold weather. So part of what killed them off is they literally overheated to death. Whereas the smaller animals didn't have that. So the modern bison made it through. The modern mule deer made it through. The modern beaver, the giant beaver, it went extinct. It was like this tall. Well, like I said, we'll go through the megafauna specifically on Friday. We may need to go back and tweak those notes just a little bit. This is not supposed to be a pun. Our modern plants, this is where they came from. 95% of your modern seed plants started in the Cenozoic. Like, I know we're still in the Cenozoic, but like early in the Cenozoic. The early part was more jungle forest. Okay, as it cooled off, the forests started to die out. They were replaced with what are called savannas or plains, okay, wide open grassy areas like what we have now. This is what transformed the center of our country. Like I said, I'm focusing more on North America because that's where we live. I don't have enough time to talk about the entire planet. Not for this. And if there's a particular megafauna that you're wanting me to talk about and I don't, it's probably because it wasn't found in North America. It was found somewhere else. I had to figure out what I was going to keep in and what I was going to leave out. I got two more. I'm about to talk about oil. My niece asked me if oil was dinosaur blood, and I almost slapped her on Saturday. I said, no, whoever told you that? It comes from plants. I don't know where she got that notion. Like I said, she also thought we were in an ice age because we got cold a month ago. No. She just started driving, and it's really scary. All right, so our petroleum, our oil, the bulk of it, not all of it, the over half of it comes from sedimentary rocks from this time period. Okay, it is from, not coal is slightly different. It comes from compacted vegetation. primarily from the Carboniferous, the Pennsylvanian period, which is why it's Pennsylvania coal. There's other types of coal too. That's the anthracite. Most of these sedimentary rocks are found in lowland areas along the Gulf. There's a reason why there's oil rigs in Texas and off the shore of Louisiana. That's where these rocks are concentrated at. That's where we get it from. Now, I know that recently, within like the last dozen years, fracking was like a real big thing and it started triggering earthquakes. Well, y'all, if you pull the stuff out, you create a void. If it collapses, it's an earthquake. That's why the fracking was causing those mild tremors about a dozen years ago or so. But that's why we find the oil rigs in those areas. That's where it is. It's not just in Texas and off the Louisiana coast, but it's heavily concentrated there. Got one more. And I gotta check online. All right, last one. Because if we're gonna go in depth with each period starting tomorrow, the oceans widened and the marine life went nuts. When we had the closing, and I don't know if that's on this or not, but when we had the closing of the Isthmus of Panama, which separated the Pacific and the Atlantic, we had whole new ecosystems develop because they couldn't like jump over the Isthmus of Panama, bless you, so that they could have interactions between species anymore. So that actually it forced evolution to take off in the oceans. Megalodon. I had people that asked me to talk about Megalodon in like the previous unit. Well, he didn't belong there, she or it. Megalodon is a Cenozoic thing, not a Mesozoic. In fact, it's recent. That is probably an image that you have seen. That is how big Megalodon's jaw was. You could put two people standing on top of each other and probably barely reach the teeth on the top. Teeth were about yay big, about a foot. Megalodon was, so I've seen anywhere from 40 to 50 feet in length. That was your top predator in the ocean. It was the biggest thing with teeth. Whales developed at this time. Like I said, whales were originally about the size of a raccoon and they came from the land. They made their way into the ocean. They still have fingers in their flippers and they still have the back leg bones if you've ever seen a whale skeleton before or a picture of one, because they came from the land. Freshwater fish went nuts in the Great Lakes when you had the retreating glaciers. That ice melted in those depressions, and large amounts of all different kinds of bass and trout, like brook trout, and rainbow trout. Oh, they're so tasty. But we're going to specifically take a look at the Paleogene tomorrow and its individual parts. I'm having a brain fart. There's only one that I know I cannot pronounce the right way. That's the third one. The Paleocene, the Eocene, and the Oligocene. Those are its three parts, and we will take a look at that tomorrow. Let me freeze this and let me stop this. Don't forget. Stop. No, stop.